Live in all the places. Just get us set up here. Okay. So we're on day 12, and I had a couple of questions from you all that I was going to address today, because this challenge is a difficult one. And so what I did was pick two comments or two questions that I got that were actually kind of opposite ends, or not asking opposite questions or making opposite observations about this challenge. And so I wanted to kind of address both of those so that you could have an illustration of what we're doing here. So the first one of you said, I'm finding I can sometimes successfully use the "is it worth it" question in order to not binge, but how do I want to feel doesn't seem to be working for me. I cannot get past that I want to feel thin, even though I know you can't feel thin. Sometimes the only thing that stops me binging is catching sight of someone slimmer than me and thinking I want to look like them, and I'm often white knuckling it. Full disclosure, I actually have a normal BMI, but I have body dysmorphia. When I look in the mirror, I see someone much heavier. Any ideas? Of course, I want to feel joy, peace, and ease, but it seems even more than that, I want to feel thin. Such a great question. Thank you for your honesty, for your transparency and vulnerability. It's a great question, and I'm going to answer it with a little tough love. So she describes wanting to feel thin, right? And is aware that thin is not a feeling. But what I suspect, and what usually happens when someone tells me this, is that feeling thin, or being thin, I should say, is representative of something else, some other feeling. And sometimes the opposite is true, that being larger or living in a larger body represents something that you don't want to feel. So let me slow this down and say, none of us ever want anything in life: a size, a weight, a shape, $1 million, a coat, a car, a relationship. Nobody ever wants anything except for the fact that they believe that by having that thing, something will change and make them feel differently or better, right? So nobody wants $1 million just because $1 million $1 bills changes their life. They want $1 million because paying off their house would make them feel less stressed, would give them more freedom, would give them more opportunity to do the things that they want to do, whatever, right? Losing 20 pounds, the pounds is irrelevant, insignificant. It's just that in the losing of it, or having it be gone, you believe that you will have a different experience of your life somehow. It will make you feel more confident. It will make you feel more happy. It will make you feel more joy. It will make you feel more ease. Whatever it is that you believe is on the other side of that weight is the feeling that you're looking for. And so for this woman in particular, there has been something attached to being thin, as you say. There is some feeling attached to it, whether it is a preconceived notion of confidence, of self-worth. Usually it ends up being self-worth, right? So whenever we're talking about our bodies and the strong desire for the body to look a certain shape or way, it is because we believe that our self-worth, our happiness, our love, our confidence lives on the other side of that body. And so the body just becomes a representation, or in this case, thin just becomes a representation of what we think we're going to feel when we're on the other side of that. And so essentially what I'm asking you to do in this exercise, and I told you I had 2 comments today. I'm going to read you another comment here in a second that illustrates this point. Essentially what I'm having you do in this exercise is to bypass the content. Remember in the very first video, I made the distinction between content versus context, right? The content is the actual food, the numbers on the scale, the size of the jeans. That's data, that's content. But what we attach to that data is context. And so what I'm asking you to do here is to bypass the content and look for the context. What is it that you're looking to feel? And let me slow down and give you another example. This isn't the other one that I was talking about, but someone else wrote me and said they had an experience of stepping on the scale earlier this week and did not like what they saw in that moment. They just started on this journey and, just started with this stuff and stepped on the scale and didn't like what she saw. And so I asked her how it felt in that moment. All kinds of negativity, right? All kinds of degradation and, I'll never get there and I don't know what to do and how long is it going to take and will I ever feel better? And she started spiraling right down in this negative feelings and negative emotions. Now, the content was the number on the scale. That number today, right now, or this was a few days ago for her, just was. It just is, right? And I understand that it's hard in this moment not to attach a negative emotion to it if what you wanted was to see something different. But here's the argument I'm making. Today, in this moment, that number is not going to change drastically, right? Like we don't lose 30 pounds in 6 hours, right? So that number just is what it is. You have a choice at that moment to say, okay, now that I have what is, what do I want to do with that? How do I want to feel? And that's where this question comes in. How do I want to feel? Well, I don't like feeling like this. I hate my body. I hate the number. I hate, did I eat well last night? Did I eat too much? And my mind starts spinning in all these places of how I'm getting down on myself and being mean to myself. And why did I do that? And I shouldn't have eaten this. And I always do this. And round and round and round we go. This is the washing machine I was talking about yesterday, right? And so I asked her, I said, look, let's take the data for what it is, the content for what it is today. You did not like that number on the scale. Okay, heard. But you have a choice now because you don't have a choice with what just showed up on the scale. It is what it is. Like I said, we don't lose 30 pounds in 6 hours. That's not the way physics works, right? So what do we do with that choice? And you have a choice how you're going to spend the rest of your day. The data just is, and we have been conditioned and we have been trained, and this goes back to the woman who was saying, I just want to feel thin. We have been conditioned and trained that we cannot experience a different emotion until the content changes. Until the number on the scale reflects what I want it to reflect, I cannot experience joy, peace, ease, confidence, okayness, worthiness. As soon as that number reflects that, as soon as the content changes, my context will change. That is backwards. Not only is it backwards, it's not very helpful. And it leaves us constantly in the reactive seat. We're reacting to the content all day long. What does the number on the scale say? Because it's going to tell me whether or not I'm going to be okay today. How do my pants fit? That's going to tell me whether or not it's okay for me to be happy today. It constantly leaves us in a state of being reactive to the content. What I asked her to do, I said, listen, today is today, right? The data is the data. You have a choice here. Can you practice what you want to feel? I said, what do you want to feel? What do you want to feel? When you step on that scale and it says exactly what you want it to say, what is it that you're looking to feel? Peace, confidence, empowered. These are things she told me. Confidence, empowered. It will make me stand taller. She said, I'd put my shoulders back and I'd stand taller. I would just feel more peace in my life. I'd stop obsessing over my food. These are all things that we can talk about later. But essentially I said, okay, that's how you want to feel. Okay. And right now, the content on the scale is a representative of you feeling that way. And as soon as the number goes where you want it to go, now you can feel those things, right? I said, what if, just for today, what if we could practice feeling those things right now? What would you do? What would your day look like? What would you eat? How would you make decisions about food? If you were focused on how you wanted to feel, if you were focused on the context, right? Because the content, the number on the scale, is just a representation of how you want to feel, the context. The data is pretty useless. It's so neutral, right? Because here's what I promise you, there are many people in this group right now for whom the weight that you're at right now, there are many, I'm not saying everybody, but there are many people for whom the weight that you're at right now, someone else would go, oh my gosh, that's my context. As soon as I got to that content, then I could feel all the context. So it is so arbitrary, right? Because you have decided that it's going to take a certain content number in order for you to be able to experience the context feeling. So I asked her to ask herself the questions that were on your challenge this week. What do I want to feel? I want to feel peace. I want to feel ease around food. In other words, stop obsessing. I want to feel confident. Okay, today, for right now, what could I do to feel those feelings? And I said, how are you going to eat today? She said, normally when I step on the scale and it's like that, I crash and burn, right? It's binging, it's constantly stuffing my face. I give up, what the heck response, all that stuff. I said, well, how does that make you feel? Worse, crappy, guilt, shame. And here I go in this spiral. I said, okay, well, if you were to make decisions in line with how you'd like to feel, that peace, that confidence, that joy, that ease, what kind of decisions would you make around your food today? Even though you're disappointed, I get it. The content didn't say what you wanted it to say. But what kind of decisions would be in line with how you want to feel, not how you were feeling in that moment? Oh, well, I would make these decisions around food. I'd take better care of myself. I'd go for a walk. She happens to know some of the tools that I teach in the shift. She said I'd probably use the fast technique. I might do some tapping, things like that. Yes, absolutely. If you were focused in that moment, when you get a piece of content that didn't feel good and you said, whoa, I don't like how this feels. Well, how do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? And you changed the content of your day to match how you want to feel, then it pulls you out of that context. It pulls you out of that negative feeling. And she did. She focused the whole day on how she wanted to feel. And she said by the end of the day, she could care less what happened on the scale because she felt so much better during the day and she was ready to keep going, right? Let me give you another example. Another one of you wrote me just last night and said, the question of how do I want to feel has put me in a whole different headspace. I sat down and I wrote out the areas of my life that are important to my day-to-day. And at the top of the page, I wrote, how do I want to feel about these areas? And I journaled about each one. Now I have been, and I can see myself going throughout my day, acting based on how I want to feel. Before, I was reactive to everything and did not feel good about the relationships I had with these areas of my life. Now I have found my downstream vibration again. She knows my work, so downstream, upstream is important to her. Last night, I went to bed for the first time in weeks without anxiety, and I slept through the night. Last night, I went to bed for the first time in weeks without anxiety, and I slept through the night. Stuff is so powerful, you guys. And I'm not saying that it's easy or that it just, clicks like that, but it can turn your life in an entirely new direction if you start to use it. So back to the original question, which was, and she ended the original question was, of course I want to feel joy and peace and ease, but it seems even more than that, I want to feel thin. So her focus is on feeling thin. And my questioning to you, my tough love to you is, what does thin represent to you? What context does thin represent? It represents something, probably self-worth or confidence or value or worthiness, or I'm worthy of love, or I'm worthy of belonging, or it represents something to you. And that's why you want it so badly, because we don't ever want anything unless we think that it's going to either bring something great to our lives or help to take away something that doesn't feel good, right? So if right now you're feeling a lack of confidence or a lack of self-esteem, you feel like the thin is going to take that away. In other words, the thin is going to give you self-worth, right? And so my argument for someone who's saying, yeah, sure, I want to feel peace, joy, and ease, but more than that, I want to feel thin. Well, what that says to me is that thin is a representation of something much larger that has to do with your value and self-worth. So we can still use this question, right? How do I want to feel? I want to feel loved. I want to feel like I belong. I want to feel like I'm okay. I want to feel like I'm worthy, right? And again, obviously I'm doing this Healthy for the Holiday series for you guys. I come on here for 15, 20 minutes and I give you some tidbits, right? This is deep work, right? So if you're struggling with this area of worthiness, of enoughness, of your self-worth being wrapped up in your body and your weight, just asking some different questions is fantastic and it'll get us on the right track, but there's a lot of deep work to be done here, right? So please don't beat yourself up if this becomes hard for you. And for her, last week's question of is it worth it was working and felt good. So keep using that, right? And we'll keep digging into this. So to answer your question in full, I believe that there is something deeper in there. What does the thin represent? What belief do you have around being thin? What belief do you have around worthiness? What belief do you have around what being thin will bring you, right? And once you have that rooted out, we can start to look at how to act and be in ways that will make you feel more worthiness. Now, I say that with the caveat. I don't want to kind of drip this here for you all because I'm about to jump off. But if you have a belief system that says thin equals worthiness, some of you have seen this webinar that I've done, but the big takeaway is you cannot outperform a faulty belief system. Our brain chemistry, our conscious and subconscious mind, the way that our quite literally the way that the brain is wired does not allow us to operate outside of the belief systems we hold. So if you hold a belief system that thin equals self-worth, we have to deconstruct that belief system first before anything else will get through to you. And she's struggling, it sounds like, with binge eating and things like that. So reach out to me. There's a lot more work to be done on deconstructing a belief system, but you cannot outperform a faulty belief system and just try and band-aid your way to it. You have to reconstruct and rewrite those belief systems first before any of this will be successful. So I hope that was helpful in illustrating not only how powerful it can be when we start asking that question, but also just kind of peeling away some layers on what's underneath that question, right? Like rooting out what you believe the content will bring in your life, right? What does the weight represent? What does the food represent? What does the money represent? It represents a context, a way of being, a way of feeling. We only ever want something because we think it's going to change our way of feeling, right? Okay, I could go on and on and on always, but we will wrap up this week, which turned out to be a pretty tough challenge. Thank you all for your feedback on it and being honest and really vulnerable about how you're doing with it. Let me just check to make sure that there's no comments or questions in the Facebook group. Okay, we're all good so far. I will see you guys tomorrow. We'll wrap up this week.